Of course, not being able to Kanga today, we're going to be switching over to some ESA action, as Reload yesterday was a bit of a shame. Us Kang fans, of course. Fiora did end up graciously winning, but in the end, we're going to be switching it over to what is truly important right now. And Delta Bacon, what is that?
That's going to be the ESA Cup upper bracket final, the winner of which is going to be going all the way through to the ESA Cup Season 10 Grand Final, the loser of which will be going to the lower bracket final.
Ooh, that sounds pretty nice if you ask me. And well, while we're already here, let's take a look at a bit of the brackets we have currently on deck. What do we have ready? What do we have to see? And where is everyone standing? Well, today we're going to be watching MVG MolotovGang face off against Ghost Army in the very upper part, looking to head towards that very, very nasty final. And, Delta, what are we thinking?
Well, I mean, MVG, they've been here, they've done it before. They booked their place in the grand final last time round, which obviously they won, being our reigning champions. But, they did have a difficult run through the competition so far, through phase one. They actually were in danger of elimination on a 3-1 loss very early on. Until they bounced back and brought it all the way back, and then they started here in phase two, beating out Nexus, beating out Entropy, and then eventually ending up here in the upper bracket final. Whereas Ghost Army, Buffo, they've just slaughtered their way through the competition. They've had 5 back-to-back 2-0 wins.
True competition that MVG were finally seeking for. Earlier on the season, or rather previous season we watched on number 9, it was a champion run for MVG, which might be being put to a halt for this time around, although we're going to have to let time tell. And currently, Delta, me and you, and the rest of the production have put up some interesting predictions to see what we really think of this matchup today. And okay, normally I am quite used to seeing MVG be mostly on the upper scale, but oh no, Ghost Army are going to be taking it home today.
Yeah, well, when you look at the past form over the course of this competition, Ghost Army are yet to lose a game. But let's dive into the statistics. Let's really dive into why I myself personally voted Ghost Army instead of MVG, because I do kind of think MVG are a very good team. I do tend to vote for them. But if you look at the stats, Ghost Army, they've won 70 rounds and they've only dropped 29. If you convert that into a win-loss ratio for rounds, Puffo, they've got a win-loss of 2.41 round for round. They've not lost a single map in this competition so far. How do you bet against that?
How do you? Well, we're going to have to see what these teams are going to be able to perform between each other. And let me talk about it like we always say. There's a champions field for all champions and contenders alike. And let's take a look at the maps that we're going to be having these two face off on today, as we have 3. It's a best of 3 fashion, and I'm honestly just wondering what's it going to be going, because we've seen both of these teams be dominant on their own. Of course, you could say respectable maps. As for the ones we're going to be seeing over today, we'll be starting off with Clubhouse, leading up with Cafe, and if we end up managing to get to the decider, Consulate will be our last.
Yeah, MVG picking out Clubhouse there. They've not picked it so far in the competition, Puffo, but they've won it a whopping 4 times out of their 7 games. So, but not having lost it at all, not surprised to see that being picked out, given that their opponents today have only played it once in the competition. They themselves won that map, but the amount of experience, the amount of time that MVG have put into this map so far in the competition, beating teams in and out every single time, I'm not overly surprised to see them pick it up. Cafe Dostoevsky coming up second. That's going to be, a fairly sensible pick. Both teams, they've won on it, but they have noticed, Ghost Army, that MVG are 1 for 1 on Cafe. And then they decide no one wants to play Lair. They all take us all the way back to the cube, back to Consulate.
Oh, why? We were this close to Lair, 1 map away. Are you kidding me, MVG? You had 1 option in you. Actually, 2 options. You had option A and B, and you ended up completely screwing it up. I would love to see some Lair on ESA. It's like a once in a millennia, and just today, we're going to be missing out on that beat. Absolutely unbelievable. But Consulate, it's a fantastic map. I think its rework is going to be a very nice addition to this roster, to both of these teams, and I think it serves well as a decider for the score, or rather the breaking point on who's going to be able to take it home and continue down this fantastic run we've been seeing, as again, MVG, their performance in ESA overall, let me remind you, has been outstanding. They have always been kind of this Majesty leading team, and in the end, right now, I feel like Ghost Army could be the first to maybe put them down, dethrone them, and take that crown for themselves. And maybe, just maybe, we're gonna see both of these in the very grand final, as even though one of them could possibly drop down to lower, they can still make their way back up.
Absolutely. Now, with this being an upper bracket final and not being necessarily a knockout game, we won't be seeing unlimited OT in this game, Puffo. It will just be
Yes.
max OT. That won't matter too much for MVG, though, because they have faced some pretty severe overtimes over the course of the competition, quite notably going as far as winning 10-8 against Cerberus back in round 4. The win, by the way, which saved them from complete elimination from the competition. However, Ghost Army haven't even come close to overtime at any point. They've won all of their matches in regulation, and some of them, Puffo, they've won very, very.
Absolutely. But now, as we've waited long enough, it's time to get into Clubhouse, ladies and gentlemen. Ghost Army used to be known as Mafia Squad, looking to make this a criminal performance, while MVG trying to seek and keep their own title. Now going to be heading into the first map of the best of 3, Clubhouse, the staple pillar of Rainbow Six Siege.
Yeah, almost ever present, basically unchanged since its inception, and a staple diet, really, isn't it? In terms of the R6 map pool, you're always going to see it, and it's ever reliable. Here come the bans, and we're maybe expecting a couple of shield operators, just to switch things up in the ESA Cup. What are we thinking, Puffo?
I'm thinking we're possibly going to be seeing some. We do have a lead from Adox, which I assume is going to get resorted either now before the match begins, or we're going to have to take a bit of a timeout. But up until then, Maverick, the first ban here, I feel like is going to be more than granted. Again, it allows easy breach, especially on CC, Jim alike, and even hatches. It makes the job of the attackers a lot more simpler than it should be. The second one, surprisingly, will be Hibana. Again, I'm not against opening hatches in a very easy, fashionable way, but in the end, that's going to be allowing Monty and Blackbeard to be kept in play.
Yeah, I mean Monty was kind of the Monty's going to be on in the game. So, we're going to see a lot of gameplay around that, and we know from past experience, even as far back as season 9, that Monty's an exceptionally powerful operator, particularly on this map, in the hands of MVG. So seeing them remain on the board, seeing the Blitz remain on the board, it means we're possibly going to get some very wide-ranging strategy from both of these teams. The gate being taken off is fairly standard, I would argue. You want to electrify those walls and try and prevent these entries for as long as possible. But finishing off with the Melusi, an operator just designed to slow things down, that's going to feed into, I think, this kind of potentially your blitz rushing mechanics or things like that. So Ghost Army really throwing the fire to the wind on that one.
And as we're going to be heading to just nicely allow these teams and players to come back and set themselves up for a comfortable performance, I saw a bit of eye-to-eye, you could say, trade-off when it comes down to the bans, right? The Kate for the Maverick, Easy Breach for Easy Breach Denial, and Quality of Life for Quality of Life, that being the Hibana for easy hatch opening and allowing castles to be opened very quickly without needing to get up close and personal with a sledgehammer. And on the other hand, we have Melusi, which in general is, again, Quality of Life. You slow down the enemies, you give them a harder time, and you get yourself some easier information while also delaying the inevitable push that is about to come. Now, the bans are going to be interesting. Again, I was expecting a bit of Monty, maybe Blackbeard, which at times I feel like the Blackbeard is becoming a bit less banned due to people realizing that he's not as much of a threat as he used to be when the adaptation clearly wasn't there and the comp scene fully expanded upon. But now, Monty still stands, meaning Rafter expansion for the attackers is going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not wrong at all. But interesting, operators which play very, very powerfully on those rafters areas are being left on the board. I think this is a ban sequence of 4 bans that really opens up the game in terms of just allowing these defenders to hold, but then also expanding the tactical flexibility for this attacking side, which will be MVG to start, to actually go and attack the game. But you are seeing operators like Azami, who's absolutely the ideal, really, Rafters operator left on the board. You're seeing a lot of counterplay between the shields and that being taken off the board. But with the rafters isn't necessarily going to matter at this time, is it, Puffo? Because we will be going down to the basement to kick off this upper bracket grand final.
What a beautiful sight this is. Church is really beloved by many teams in Rainbow Six Siege and to be considered one of the best sites, if not the best site Clubhouse to have to offer. And I'm going to be loving how these defenders are going to be taking it. From my line of sight, I see defenders either going fully shelling it themselves into sight using the Izami, the Fenrir, the Mira, as well. Any type of gadget that allows, again, tries to keep you sealed within that site and keep the enemy sealed outside of it. Or of course there's also the B plan, which a lot of teams take, the roam opposition.
Yeah, so the setup's done now. Now it's just time to get into the building and get your killing done. Ghost Army, they're going to play a little bit expanded on their own, but not overly. 4 players going to be anchored in, dug in like a tick on that underground basement area. Whereas MolotovGang, they're not going to have too much of a job in terms of pushing onto sites. And most of the combat, you would wager, Puffo, is going to take place around the stairwells and on the site itself.
And to allow the attackers to come down so easily, we do see that Kilf is going to be taking some early damage here. The Tuberon backing off main side, and now Ghost Army have really resorted down to sticking to where they belong. The defense majorly having the site be obstructed by all gadgets, but MolotovGang seem to be adapting to this aggression. Now the C4 there will be taking out vastly a drone alone, and again, it is gadget for gadget, but in the end, that's as far as we get with that value.
Yeah, a bit of a slow round so far. MolotovGang, they're not really having to push because they're not having to really do that much of a roam clear. They've now got 2 minutes to go ahead and attack the site, and all the denial in the world coming out from this Tuberon, that'll be done by 1:30, like, you know, potentially slightly sooner, depending on how the Tuberons land. So MolotovGang, they've got every opportunity to just go ahead and start attacking this round in the way that they would choose, because they're not limited by having to roam clear. They don't really have to watch their back with all 5 Ghost Army operators securely on that bottom floor.
Quickly establishing verticality. Normally people also really like using the ram. Now the Buck is going to be spotting that his skeleton key isn't quite effective on a certain part of the kitchen floor, but now going to be simply having to do with what he can is just will pick up the first drop of blood onto Yoshiro. First of all, the Mute still had a lot to offer, I imagine, but will not be there to even help out the remaining players when it comes down to the execution denial. Ghost Army with one less. MolotovGang now getting a bit more closer, still trying to pick off 1v1s, but little do you know, Senzo's already got the feeling of the groove as Aine is returned after.
Yeah, a bit of a slow round so far, though. One of the things that really this MolotovGang team prides itself on is being very quick on the offense, but here it comes. Now it comes through as the double kill comes through from Just. It falls down into a 3v1. All that's left is Senator, but it's not going to be enough, and MVG will take a dominant first round in which Ghost Army, they sat back and they were punished for it.
Punished for it indeed. Now, as that's going to be the first round here, MVG are already going to be proving to be quite a dominant force, taking 1v1s and predicting a lot of the movement made by Ghost Army. In certain moments, they were simply patient, they were waiting, and that's what struck MolotovGang the first. Also being quite ratty at times, but that connection that all these MVG players have built up together through so much time and such chemistry that has been worked around through ESA alone, they will be using that to take down Ghost Army in the first round, but Ghost Army say, F it, we ball. We're going for a second chance over on the downstairs floor.
Yeah, the attitude there isn't that MVG won it, the attitude there is that we lost it. So let's go there again, let's do it a little bit better, and let's win it this time round. Back down to the basement for Ghost Army. And I've got to say, Puffo, I really would quite like them to see commit to the roam a little bit more, because they ceded the territory so early on. And Siege in that first minute is kind of a territory game, claiming territory as defenders and holding onto it so that you're not immediately taking 2 minutes of contact on site. You want to be holding these defenders up, stopping them from doing their attack site prep, opening the hatches, opening verts, setting up these angles from which they can lay pressure on the defenders. That's what that first minute and a half is all about, and they failed to do that in round 1.
Failed to do so, and now Ghost Army are going to be resorting to their first round being lost. It definitely isn't the best, but MVG kick off a lot of their matches with showing some sort of effort to make sure that their enemies are caught off guard by majority of their defense, of their attack, whatever it may be, and that's going to be the first round, which for the defense may not be looking the best. What? It's only up from here. It's a learning curve, and MVG yet again are going to be nicely checking all nooks and crannies to make sure there isn't any roamer by chance.
And here we go, we're 45 seconds in, Puffo, and once again, every single member of the defending Ghost Army team, they're sat down on the bottom floor. They're in that basement. And whilst I appreciate, maybe it can be tempting somewhat to go ahead and just anchor in on site, it's only damaging them because now MVG, they've got enough utility to sit there patiently for 2 minutes, open up these hatches, get the vert control, and given the drone game that MVG tend to bring to these proceedings, they'll know that there's no one upstairs. They'll know. So they can just go about their duties, kind of unfettered and unbothered.
Ghost Army here could have definitely brought some extra edge over to MolotovGang's search, but in the end they rather resorted to trying to go for the same playstyle they used in round number 1, which definitely isn't going to be doing them any better. A game is a siege of adaptation, and trying to overcome what your enemies put down. Not picking it up, Ghost Army might be putting themselves in quite some troublesome positions, as Hatchie going to be back on that floor, which definitely was quite a position mover, to say the least. Now, the mute might be a perfect counter here, but Ghost Army, look how close they're going to be sticking. 2 players right next to each other, playing around the bomb site on A, while the other 3 are spread about just nicely to line up for one of the players of MVG to take out.
That was an anticlimax. Slightly better blue hold here, but it's still going to be a little bit of a losing story as Senzu already Senzo falling as the first minute ticks by. Been a quiet round so far, not that much in the way of extended gunfire, but that's as a result of this turtling strategy that Ghost Army have taken up, and now the utility comes pouring in through the hatches, which Two Brow can't keep closed forever, Bob.
Talking about pouring, it's going to be smoothly waving down. The drops of H2O here from Ghost Army are about to be delivered, and MolotovGang looking to start dropping down hatches. That's going to be A close by, but Addis takes the first fall. A second for, of course, going to be Klein A, and Yoshiro might be able to return for one. Charlie as well with a second, but through smokes blindsided, and Hatchie taking advantage of it. Again, MVG will be delivering a similar performance on the similar mistakes Ghost Army made, and winning themselves the second in a row.
Yeah, and whilst the commit comes very late in the round, it's that consistent pressure through the round to maybe take out, someone who can open hatches. Maybe take out, for instance, the book that they're using to open up the vert. It's these early plays which MVG, they're not being affected by because Ghost Army simply aren't committing to them. 1 or 2 players playing, even on a slim roam, to maybe interrupt what they're doing, that would be ideal. But I'm not sure what the strategy here is, Bob, because at the moment, they're just sat back. They're just letting MVG put their will on the game. They're holding on to what they've got, but it's round 3. They've not won a round. They have nothing.
Oh, they don't. Well, finally going to be resorting to a different site, changing positions, and also going to the tertiary top, aka the best one besides CC, which can be a bit more difficult to play without a Cade. Hoping to rely on that Azami. We're going to be see how Jim and Cash now, or rather Jim and Bedroom, are going to be working out for the 2, especially Ghost Army, as we can already see the best 2 operators on the site are clearly going to be the ones to reshape the site and make sure to lock things down. Again, force MolotovGang into picking operators that might not be in their wish list, such as the Castle and the Azami, and of course, seeing the counterplay being the Ash Majorly.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they react to being up on this top site. And something that's really interesting, Bob, is yesterday these 2 teams played each other in a different competition, and they played it in basically the same maps. And on that one, MVG lost 2-0. Which means that Ghost Army, they're doing something which evidently works for them. But MVG, they've had 24 hours, presumably, so far to actually say, do you know what, let's plan around that. We know what their defensive strats are. And it appears to me like there's not been any adaptation from Ghost Army. This one's slightly better. You can see you've got 2 operators roaming over on the eastern side of the building, as opposed to previously where everyone was just on the one floor. It's effectively one big old site in that area. Whereas here, now MolotovGang, they're going to have to be clearing room by room. It's just, this kind of extension is going to be a lot better for them, I wager.
I imagine MolotovGang didn't really show their all out in the match yesterday, as this is what we're going to be seeing today. This match today clearly showing off a lot more importance, and Senzo, what a beautiful delivery, free shipping, and MolotovGang going to be losing a care package right off the bat. Now extra damage from the Goo Mine is going to be doubling down on it. The push from Cash is going to be major, but MolotovGang, your Thatcher is no longer. You might have that hard breach, but you need to put it to work, as I do believe that Jacuzzi is still going to be constructed and downlocked under Bay.
Yeah, and that's the kind of kill which I was on about. So Hassie being on that Thatcher is going to be absolutely vital to trying and open this external wall for Ghost Army. Sorry, for MolotovGang. Now that isn't on the table. That's not available to them. So that forces MVG, with a minute and a half left to go at the time of the kill, a minute to go now, to really revamp their strategy. And this is where the pressure comes, where defenders can start applying their own pressure, where defenders can start winning and picking up rounds. That early offensive pressure has yielded some really good results there for Ghost Army. Now they just need to compound it.
Now they need to compound it too. Going to be extremely close to Yoshiro, but is he going to be taking those bullets? Yes, he does. Finds the first nice headshot. Going to be leading right into those bullets, but gonna need to push him out. That's damage, but not enough to take the MP7 user out. As he keeps on swinging, he dodges. Call him from the Matrix, but finally Sendo is the one to take his place. And in the end, he sticks by the C4 there. Will it be a bait? He lays down, and Variox falls for it, looking for the final. It will be Adox on the kill feed, as now Ghost Army are going to be winning their first round.
Yeah, I mean, Cedazzo shouldn't be losing that. They've got all the info from the swing. They're counter-swinging the other way, and the player was tagged. They shouldn't be losing that, but it doesn't matter anyway. As Ghost Army, they pick up their first round, and I hate to call it, and I hate to be like, yo, I told you so, or blow my own trumpet, but I will say a lot of that is because they took Hassie off the board early. That limited the amount of routes that this MVG side could take to the site. They couldn't open up that exterior wall that connects, around 90. They couldn't open it. So there was much less routes, and they had to try and improvise. Now, credit to them, they gave up a little bit of fight, but round 4, here we are, with Ghost Army registering their first. Back down to the basement we go.
I mean, look at the changes here, Delta. Look at the changes from Ghost Army. They know what they're doing. They're putting that brain to work, and loving to see not only the Mozzie, not only the Solus, but for the love of God, Clayday on that Vigil. Gonna be seeing what we can really do with that K1A. Or no, it's gonna be the Boss G to rubbing some extra alcohol onto the wound of MolotovGang, as their first round was lost, that being round number 3. In the end, though, Ghost Army are looking for a comeback and a bit of vengeance, I could call it. As of course, this adaptation definitely is going to be putting it from 0 to 100.
Getting droned out though up there, whilst you are in fact a Vigil, getting droned out, especially that early, it shouldn't be something that happens. But MVG, their drone game is so strong. Now they know that Vigil's playing top floor. They have to relocate. They drop all the way back down to basement. That bit of a nightmare.
MolotovGang, the Jackal, have quickly caught on to the case that Ghost Army might as well be now offside a bit more in the majority, at least comparing it to how it was before. And also the Grim being a fantastic addition for the Execute, now needing to rely on it just in case, but the Grim being the one to first step into the building will be quite a risky take if you ask me. It's like putting a Yank first. You do not want the Execution operator to die.
Yeah, a bit of a quiet first minute so far as Ghost Army. They are playing a little bit more extended on this roam game, only having 2 players actually back down in the site, and this is where that early kill will be key. But with so many players committed off site, it'll be interesting to see whether they can get the kill firstly, but then also rotate safely back to site. The drone games come out. They know now, MVG, they know that Ghost Army are operating very heavily up on this second floor.
How much more stepping stones do we need, MVG, to actually reach the 2 roamers? You can't just let them be roaming around free off charge and having them go away with a get out of jail free card. They could come up behind you and easily take you out on the spot. Now this Mozzie seems to be the greatest enemy, the big bad wolf knocking at MolotovGang's door. They're noticing these holes, they're noticing these openings, but they just can't seem to latch on to the exact clue, trying to puzzle these pieces together. And that's going to be a beautiful shot from Variox. He takes the initiation, he takes out Yoshiro alongside it, but 1 player, and all of a sudden MVG are left down to 1 minute.
Yeah, Variox kept her relatively quiet rounds 1 and 2, only picking up 1 kill when we're used to them picking up more, but they are a bit of a hero player. They can go ahead, seize control of the game, and just pick up that entry. Very nice kill to open it up, but the Romans are doing their job. Now there's only 45 seconds left for MVG to move down, attack the site.
Oh, and Kleine, that's one for your lost comrade, but an extra one to regain some sort of balance in your favor and have it pivot. The chances be yours, and damned be MolotovGang, who just can't get this easy entry. They're still focusing on this utility way too much. They still have mirrors to take care of, running into sight, and that's no easy task, but finding out one that is Sinzo to fall first, Ane looking to follow next, and all of a sudden, Aenox finishes the job, but not being fully out. The last one, Kleine, he started off this execution with a kill of his own, but in the end, the last bullet gets put into his own numb skull, and all of a sudden, we have, again, MolotovGang back with a 2-round difference.
Strategically, significantly better round from Ghost Army. However, at the end of the day, you also need to tap on heads, and MVG did that very, very nicely. That opening kill from Variox did not really damage the amount of utility that they could field, but what it did do, oh, that's naughty. That's naughty. That has to come off the back of a drone scan somewhere. That's that's a bit cheeky, is that? But it was a lovely opening pick, and that opens up the rest of the top floor. Now, credit to them. Having wasted 2 minutes, 4 of them survived to get back down to the site. But once they were back down to the site, MVG, they'd already done a little bit of prep on that middle floor, and they were ready to just go ahead and commit. And I think that overwhelmed this Ghost Army defense a little bit too much, because they weren't able to respond in kind. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Bob, if you can tap on heads quicker than the other team, you can get by with a little bit of a lack strategy.
You can. In the end, look, if someone's skilled enough to get himself an ace just by simply flicking left, right, and that aim lamp is being the carry, it's possible. It's possible. But the strategy makes it easier. It pushes on extra pressure to the opponents, and that's why all of a sudden we're going to be diverted and transported to none other than CC and Cash. Now, CC and Cash is an interesting sight, especially when a Bandit and Mira combo is going to be along. Now, the Mira might be a bit useless, and people from the outside can simply punch it without any, I would say, risk. According to, at least, as long as Ghost Army don't decide to go for random runouts on stock side and garage door, but that all depends on the if.
Yeah, and the ability to eject it, whilst it creates a two-way hole, that it is in fact that, a two-way hole. So it does present a little bit of jeopardy for these attackers as they approach that wall, because, you know, it's fully sealed. They don't necessarily have to clear it, but they've got to keep their ears on, especially for hearing if it does get ejected out. A minute goes down into the round almost, and then MVG, they'll be getting ready to start planning their attack into the site, as we see them starting to graciously start to open up into construction here.
Sabana has been quite a hefty damage dealer for the attackers, now having to manually punch holes into the castle until that thing is right out and open. The Ghost Army, they're not going to be letting go of it so easily. Verticality might be going out, but also I imagine that some of these players are looking to challenge it. Anox taking damage, and more damage delivered onto Materia, as Yoshiro finds that shrapnel, he finds the boom, connects it right on the dot, and well, Kleine is looking to do just about the same, although being approached by the ace quite personally. I believe some of these players have caught on to where the pulse might be sticking, and now it's all down to if Kleine can survive on his own, or rather, how much time can he waste? He challenges, he goes up front, but he just can't finish what he started. Saving the life of Ane will be just on to claim in his case, but what a beautiful lineup for the side of Hatchie as he catches Charlie off guard, and all of a sudden, Ghost Army have lost all type of composure that they've gained with those opening kills.
Yeah, the pulse kill, I mean, it came down to individual skill. They could have pinched them and maybe not seeded all of that HP for Aina, but they got the job done. They're in a 4v3 scenario with a minute left on the clock. However, Rafters control still in Ghost Army's hand. They've still got control of all these major parts of site, and that Azami setup, that's going to be a bit rough to break. There's going to be an audio call if you do end up pushing up those red stairs. These castle barricades doing the Lord's work for the defenders right now.
Defenders, and they're not doing any Lord's work for themselves. They're being sent down to hell, quite frankly, 6 foot under, and all that you can challenge with is going to be that gun, as Just gets one. That's going to be Senzo for the grave, and the last one flatlined. Yoshiro on the spot, coffin bed, whatever you want to call it, but he will be the last to stand and fall, as again, Ghost Army will be faltering to MolotovGang's approach, and now we have a 4-2 split for MVG. Well, 4-1.
4-1, yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves, because in the form that they're in right now, you can't say that they're not going to take round 5, are they? They're just really hitting their shots. And listen, I think I'd love to be a little bit more tactical, a little bit more astute in my analysis, Puffo, but ultimately they're just tapping the other team faster than they get tapped. And it's as simple as that. They're playing a very, very strong FPS game where the strats, yeah, they're kind of there. Do you know what I mean? They're very normal strats, but the big thing is they're just absolutely lethal in these 1v1s. And Ghost Army, they're not really forcing that much in the way of more v1s. They're taking the 1v1s, they're not doing too well at them so far. Will that change when they're on attack, or indeed will that change in this game? Because this is the site where they did go on to win it in round 3, but it was only just.
Ghost Army yet to be vindicated of the possibility that he might be having a troublesome time in the second upbringing of this half match. Right now, MVG, like you said, swing or be swung, and that matters a lot when ESA Cup is on the line, especially Season 10, as of course, Ghost Army have not yet cut their losses. MVG, let's see what they're going to be doing to have them do so. As round 6, this is going to be the final one of the first half, and Ghost Army need to put their max efforts on, otherwise they might be driven to the ground by MVG, because a 5-1 is no joke. You might be on that attack, which possibly could be worse.
At that stage, it's not just a question of, you know, attacker side or defender side, it's a question of momentum at that point. And so far, the momentum is firmly in the hands of the reigning champions, Puffo, as they already conduct their breach into the, you know, the further reaches of this roam presence over into CCTV. These, the Goyo canisters going to get popped potentially prematurely. Utility taken off the board. Just will take a little bit of damage, but not enough to put them down, as these roamers, they're more wasting time, which is valuable, but really, they want to be taking heads.
Oh, that's cutting it mighty close, Jesse. You almost lost your head there. Same could be said for Adox, who does manage to just scuttle away in a certain moment, time frame, whatever you want to call it. But MVG have found this area, as Senzo still looking to challenge us and light these players up like a Christmas tree. And Lane's taking some damage. Yoshiro's delivering it on the other hand, as MVG are now going to be having some losses brought down to their attention. Spotting out the Goyo, sticking around red stairs and just nicely holding it down on Bay. Not letting go of it, but the second you realize he's already been completely dismissed, Adox finds Materia somewhere. I don't know where that was, but whatever it matters is that Ghost Army are bringing that potential to them, and MolotovGang have zero clue where this Goyo hides, as simply he's taking the fight to them, but just manages to barely get out by the skin of his teeth and a couple dots of HP remaining.
Senazo can't really be forgiven for that one, unfortunately. They had the info, they had the audio, just didn't see them. But then, as they peek over, the recall takes over. Yashiro with a big triple kill to open the game right up. It's just the Ash of Multi-Hassi left for the attackers now, as they're trying desperately to thin the herd. They'll take kinda out the board, and they're peeking every which angle. But all Ghost Army need to do now, Puffo, is they just need to sit back and relax. Don't get too overexcited. This is a round in the bag if you don't lose your heads.
This is a round as easy as it gets. Come on, a 1v3 can't possibly be lost. I already predicted the 4v2 in the first time that actually predicted anything right in Siege. As with the 15 seconds remaining here, Hassi only has one option, and that's the option MVG have been constantly taken apart. Take head, take shot, and cock that trigger, because right now he's going in. He's searching each single nook and cranny, but Yoshiro's had in the one he didn't look at. As now Ghost Army win their second. This was the bare minimum effort needed from the defensive side, and splitting it off to a 4-2 MVG on the defense are going to be looking mighty comfortable.
And you know what? In that situation, I say, you know, essentially that's Ghost Army's round. And that's true. You know, you'd never expect to lose a 3v1. Well, MVG are full of hero players, Buffo. All of their players, every single one, and this is maybe something which sets them apart from a lot of teams, every single one of their players is of such an individual quality as well as a team quality that any of them can play, you know, pull a hero play out of nowhere. So there's, especially on the Ash, and especially with it being Hassi, there has to have been a little bit of concern there, as they knew who they were facing and they know exactly what they're capable of. You can't write this MVG side off. But a 4-2 split, MVG will be happy that. Ghost Army will be relatively disappointed given their performance so far in ESA. This could well be the first map that they lose. They've got a bit of a mountain to climb now if they want that not to be the case.
Yeah, the peak of the mountain here is going to be Hatchy. You mentioned him being dangerous on the Ash. God forbid him being picked on the dock. This MP5 is going to be ruining Playpool's careers right now. Ghost Army need to take him out. Otherwise, you know how MVG is. Like you mentioned, each single player here packs quite some heat. Although we're going to have to see how that transfers over to the defensive side, where the guns might be booted down compared to the attackers. A bit more up close and personal, you could say. But looking at the lineup here, Delta, we're seeing a bit of a mixture, or at least some sort of difference compared to what Ghost Army offered us.
Yeah, I mean, there's still some similarities, in terms of there's the book for the vertical and things like that, but, it's over on the defender side. It's a bit of a different setup, especially for the basement site than we saw previously. But a big thing that's kind of stayed the same is the lack of a roam presence. We're only seeing one person playing over on central stairs. That's just over on the Goyo. But even so, that's still a minimally extended roam for a team that's known, really, for having a very strong roam game. So I'm curious what the strategy here, Buffo, is, and why they're copying Ghost Army when it didn't really work for Ghost Army.
No, it didn't. It really didn't. And as much as they want to kind of maybe scout out the mistakes themselves, you don't need to be doing all of that in a match against Ghost Army themselves. Again, you're allowing the enemies to gain easy access, no time management needed, and simply get into that execution part with as little effort as needed. A drone or two on stairs, and then have yourself ka-ching, ka-chang, and all of a sudden everything is given up to you. It's like a giveaway here for Ghost Army, and they're winning it over and over again. But MVG, I guess they might be confident on how well they can click once pressure rises.
MVG are a side that play off a lot of emotion, a lot of attitude, and a lot of swagger, Puffo. It actually genuinely would not surprise me if they saw what Ghost Army did, said, let's recreate the setup and show them how it's really done. That would not surprise me in the slightest, because they're a team, Marmite team, love them or hate them, they'll go out of their way to try and beat you psychologically in that way and put you down. What you can do, we can do better.
Putting up the challenge, and it's going to be taken up by Ghost Army. Let's see it. MolotovGang now going to be facing a lot of this verticality from the Buck side, which I'm still curious why people really dislike the Ram side, and why Ryox has personally against Clay, as that will be the first victim for the count. Now, there's only one remaining, but 9 more players to take up. Ghost Army, MolotovGang, I'm already feeling this bloodbath about to be dropping down as Adox will return some fire. That's a revenge shot, to say the least. Now, a spot of the elbow won't be able to bring a player down, but MolotovGang are still using open windows or not. Mirrors can be brought, destroyed, or cracked. They're going to be used with what they can, and that's a down. The Vector proving to be quite an existential gun as Variox gets a double up. A nice double kill for himself, not a down, being helped out by his teammates as Senzo finishes, but that secondary will not get you far as Aine swings for the final, gets it, and MolotovGang all of a sudden with 5 rounds in their pocket.
And we've learned that they were right. Anything Ghost Army could do, MVG can do better. Yep. That was an interesting round, because despite the lack of real roam presence, it took Ghost Army right away till the 20 seconds to go until they really truly started pushing. And it's 2025. We're not locked in the dark days of the 20-second meta anymore, Puffo. We've got an operator list which lends itself to expansive gameplay, being very fast, being very direct. MolotovGang, they didn't even necessarily roam, and yet they managed to deny enough time from Ghost Army that it didn't really matter in the end. They were fighting 6 players, not 5. The 5 players of MolotovGang, plus the timer.
Look, MolotovGang do not need to give any second chances to a side, be it one or the other. They simply go next, and that's where we're going to be heading. Again, Gem and Cash, of course, going to be seeing a similar lineup. You always need to have a Mira, a Azami, and of course the Castle, if given up, and of course the Bandit to make sure that Jacuzzi stays closed as permitted and as wished upon. Ghost Army, on the other hand, we take a look at them. We're going to be bringing nothing unusual of the sorts either. It's simple strategizing, and it's simply just using the jack of all trades lineup, you could say.
Yeah, I think there's not it's overly surprising about this lineup, but we've seen Castle used to some great effect so far in this map on a variety of different sites so far by these two teams. So it's not surprising to see them once again taken by Aina. Quite interested to see how the Azami plays out in whether they'll be operating mostly in the bedroom where they are currently, or whether they'll be off the leash somewhat and allowed to roam around a little bit. Very minimal roam so far. We've not got that much of a presence at all any further than construction from MVG, so they're remaining a little bit tighter and a little bit more compact than Ghost Army did, who quite liked going over to the west of the building and reinforcing all of those sites.
The roam extension, nor any extension being spotted out besides the furthest over towards construction side, as we're placing down some castles mid-game. MolotovGang right now, again, sitting comfortably as Ghost Army really aren't applying that needed pressure to pull them into those corners they want them to be. Again, teams would preferably apply pressure so that they can really act as that type of puppeteer-ish figure and have the enemies step into the line of sight instead of having to approach and direct them, to directly approach them when it comes down to gunfight, especially if it's MVG on the line.
And this is something which you don't really see overly often because not a lot of teams take that castle on this site anymore, but the bandit trick being used very effectively to deny the external breach over there in the hallway, the Azami charges being used to block off these sightlines in bedroom, and Senazu being relieved of their head so that they play no further part in this round.
Take a step into the wrong direction, and MolotovGang are going to be taking the right approach with it. As one of the first, Ghost Army will be losing a major asset alongside Yoshiro, who stands just about as strong when it comes down to guns. But guns won't be used for the third, as Just delivers a fatal blow with that C4, finally returning it. Kleine is looking to make a change, and a beautiful flick to the right as that run out will all be for naught. And is this how MolotovGang throw their 5v3 position? No, Variox keeps it coming. Those bullets need to be delivered. And a quad for the Frost, a gun that most don't anticipate to perform the best due to its fire rate, but when it's in the hands of Variox, God knows what comes out of it.
They're one of these players where they can be kept quiet sometimes, but when they really turn it on, they properly smash the gas pedal down through the floor. Variox, very wonderful, wonderful gameplay there as they smash out a 4K, and these are the kind of things that they're capable of. Sitting pretty now, up on 13, absolutely fantastic round from them. In a round where MolotovGang themselves didn't really do anything wrong, but Variox decided to put them on their back anyway. Don't worry lads, I'll take over this round, you just have a little bit of a rest. And here we go to not even the tertiary site, Puffo. We're going to the final site, one which no team really tends to go for, and this is indicative of that attitude that MolotovGang bring to all of their games. They're going to what is so universally considered perhaps one of the worst sites in competitive Siege, and they're doing it on match point.
No, match point is a hard, rough one. Gonna need to bite the bullet down for it. Ghost Army 4 rounds away from reach with MolotovGang's current score, and to also allow themselves overtime is definitely going to be a hard bargain to go through, but you have to deal with it. Beggars can be choosers, and this is the bet that was made for Ghost Army to lay in. Now either they're going to have to face defeat early on within regulation and MVG taking the first map, or Ghost Army are going to be doing some fantastic work, but that all depends on how flawless they can be, not only on their gameplay, but again, knowing when and how to challenge MVG.
So what we're going to see here, they're actually going to go for a very tight top floor hold because they know that they're very capable of holding onto that top floor, holding from that gym bedroom area. So they're going to have Vert all over this site, as well as having a couple of players just playing in the site just to occupy space, occupy time from these attackers. The attackers, they may be taken somewhat unaware by this hold up top. They are going to go to the top floor. They're going to start opening up. That logistics office is going to be a pretty key area in this map. Good God, I thought they'd fallen off the building then. That wouldn't have been what they wanted, was it?
No, it really wouldn't happen. Definitely also a bad start here. Ghost Army advancing nicely, going by the book, getting the breach, and also punishing MolotovGang for not checking your floor zones will definitely be a great beginning, but we need that continuation. Ghost Army have always had a very decent start. It's just that little end touch that ends up pushing them over the brink and over the edge where they fall off the cliff, and MolotovGang stand at the very peak of the crop, which they're looking to repeat in this match point as Variox will be taking the first one. Ace to fall, that is going to be one of the worst first starters, and another to fall as Adox is going to be joining him down 6 foot under as MolotovGang have already presented a fantastic performance and looking to upkeep it as Charlie with one tap, a couple of attempts just will be taken out after the third. And right now, let's see it, MolotovGang. You've lost one, you still have one above. Are you able to keep it? Oh, no, I don't think so. Oh, Charlie's gone. Materia from above. And Ghost Army are crumbling like a cookie. This might just be it. Sento still putting up the effort to make sure it isn't as close as some might think of it. But MolotovGang right now, you have 3. You can play down to the fact that utility is going to be still in your way. And focusing on this verticality might be the major aspect. As now Ghost Army might have to put it down. And well, look at Clayton. He's simply going for the plant. But I don't think anyone noticed it. Maybe just the hatch being anticipated here, although no one falling for the bait just yet. Ada's still waiting for that second tick to come around. A challenge from Clayton and Senzo dueling up to get themselves in a 2-to-1 situation. And the final one being dependent on the diffuser as Materia stuck down in a corner, backed up against a wall. And Ghost Army managed to just barely climb out of the hole.
I think the key one there, the key kill there is Aina failing to kill the faked diffuser from Kleine. Very well played from the book there in that instance, because that hatch drop, that was kind of what the whole thing pivoted around, really, isn't it? At that point, very, very fantastic gameplay from them coming out in a game state scenario where I think, I don't know about you, Puffo, I shan't speak to you. I wouldn't be that presumptive, but for myself, I was convinced MVG were taking it there and then. But Ghost Army, they took a game by the scruff of the neck and they said, no, not today, not like this, not just yet. And they punished MVG's hubris, taking us to 6-3, but still very much map point for the defenders.
Give us a bit of an edge, but they're not going to be giving up just yet. And Ghost Army are going to be insinuating that thought with Yoshiro's pick of not only bringing the Ying, but in combination with the Grim, might be performing one of the most brutal attacks we've been seeing on this bottom floor. Up until now, we haven't even seen Ying being in the equation. All of a sudden, Ghost Army are starting to feel the groove, and just as I mentioned it, Yoshiro's back on the Ash, and, well, Adox, he's going to be picking up that role.
Ying's a fantastic pick, but unfortunately, for MolotovGang, they're not bringing the Warden, and that's something that's been really picked out by Ghost Army. So the Warden means there's no defense against these Ying charges, of which he has 4, plus the rest of the throwables from the rest of the team. So you can expect a very aggressive push if Ying does in fact survive to get to the basement.
Yeah, that's always a huge blunder from teams. They can't necessarily keep the Ying alive, either by forcing the Ying to take the position of a primary fragger, or of course by simply an accident happening, if we call it an accident. Now MolotovGang, I imagine they're going to be quite happy once they figure out the Ying is still on deck, and possibly even wanting to maybe target her out.
I don't think they'll be aware just yet that she's on the field, but they'll be aware very quickly once she deploys the first of those charges, and the panic that'll ensue given the lack of a Warden, I imagine, will be palpable. Yashiro going to effect an entry up into top site, which, obviously you need to do that roam clear. But do you? Because neither of these teams so far have indicated any desire to actually roam anywhere beyond main stairs on this site. So interesting that there is still that need to go ahead and just complete the roam clear. Of course, the time that you don't will be the time that half the team sat on that top floor waiting to flank you, Puffo. So you can't really criticize it too much, but with a minute and a half down in the round and no action taken really towards the site, maybe it is time to start getting a little bit of a rush on.
As in Western Standard, both of these teams still waiting for the countdown to happen, and right now we might be just getting to the numbers, as Kleine is going to be initiating one of the players from Molotov, who's going to be getting away with his own profit, delivering some damage, not taking any of his own, and now these Green Bees will be starting to maybe just give a bit of a sign to MolotovGang that finally Ghost Army have started making a push towards taking over their site, and also maybe, just maybe, starting to let this Ying unload as the Candelas. I imagine they're being quite edged here by Adox.
50 seconds to go, and the Candela's still not seeing any action. You know, at this point, you're thinking maybe it's about to go time, because the last time they waited this long, they failed very much. Getting the execute done, they waited until 20 seconds. The go time is now. Atox picks up a kill onto Hassi. Big kill over onto the dog, but that'll get returned in kind by just up through the hatch onto Atox. No more Ying. Only one charge makes it out, but just pops a refrag for their trouble.
That will be huge. That's going to be a huge pick here against Ghost Army, but all we can do is watch as every single one of our teammates will falter to the hands of Senta with a pistol for the last. And out of nothing, Ghost Army may have lost that Ying, but it doesn't matter as long as that Ying is the only loss they actually come out with. The casualties from MolotovGang were far too great for Ghost Army to not take advantage of, and they're going to keep on climbing to this overtime as MolotovGang, I'm imagining they're feeling the real threat starting to kick in.
Yeah, great gameplay from Kleine on the book. For those of you who aren't familiar with the names, QLFGA is Kleine. Do not ask me to make any head nor tail of it or any sense. I just go off what they tell me. But Kleine, you know, they're having a really good game so far, and they're having, I think, maybe a bit of an understated game. Because whilst they're not top fragging on their team by any stretch, they are having some really important impact kills, you know, both last round and this round. Last round where they obviously clutched up using the book to kill Aina before the drop, and then obviously the round that we've just seen there with the flank coming through. Fantastic gameplay from them. 6-4 then. Wow, remember the score, Tom. 6-4 for MolotovGang. They're still very much in the ascendancy, still very much on map point, but now their momentum advantage has disappeared, and Ghost Army are the ones with the momentum now, having taken 2 rounds on to trot. But one slip up, Puffo, and it'll be curtains for them.
That 6-2 score is starting to slowly feel like a nostalgic memory. If it were never to happen, or maybe just way too long ago, MolotovGang are starting to really make up some slip-ups. It feels like both of these teams are quite major attack enthusiasts, and just quite the opposite when it comes down to defensive. And right now, we're going to be seeing a lot more roam from MolotovGang than we did see from them when they were on Church, ironically, which I don't know how well is going to work here for Cash and Jim, but hopefully it works the way they want it to.
Yeah, given the prevalence of book, it's no surprise that they have decided to opt for having someone on the roam below. Just unfortunately for them, unbeknownst to them, there is no book playing in this round. And Ghost Army, I think one of the things you've got to give them credit for is they've had a lot of different attacking setups so far in their own attacking half. They've not been content to just sit down and let the game happen. They're very open to adapting and going out and attacking and chasing the game.
First window of opportunities here opened by Yoshiro as he's trying to check 1v1 spots, maybe any angle he can find himself this opening pick off of. Nemo's nicely said, gotta be surviving him another Adox. Make sure that he gets kept in the lineup, and Madaria taken off, and instead the main breach is gonna be the next direct focus. All of a sudden, MolotovGang are starting to really fall apart as a team.
Fall apart they are. They lost that player very early. I think that's maybe the earliest kill we've seen so far on Ghost Army's attacking round, but Vryox not content with that. They'll take Sinezo off the board, making it a 4v4, nice and level. Not sure if that breach will have come through, because as they tried it last time, they did in fact get bandit tricked with the support of the castle, but the challenge from outside isn't going to come to anything as Hassi and Aina take out Yashiro and Atox respectively, and that's going to be a big problem for these Ghost Army attackers, as they are on map point against them. There's only 2 of them versus 4 of MVG, and they're separated. They can get pincered in. Hassi takes out Charlie with a lovely C4. It's all down to Kleiner out on the roof, outside, looking at every single window. They can get peeked from a variety of angles. They've got 30 seconds on the clock, and they haven't even got bomb in hand, Puffo, as the defenders just will pop outside. They'll take the head off of this attacker, and they'll take map 1.
Oh, Ghost Army have never dropped the ball so hard as MVG simply balling hooped around the final 4 and found themselves a brilliant moment, catching Ghost Army in a moment where they weren't fully paying their all their max attention, you could say. And in the end, such a good climb from Ghost Army, but in the end, matters not at all as it goes within regulation and a 7-4 score, which definitely brought it quite close. Again, it was a good attempt here from Ghost Army on the attack, but once they start swinging and shooting, you really can't stop MVG, and that's going to be Clubhouse, the first map of the best of 3 for their own under the belt, and looking to nicely dig it into that dirt with a second one, which will be, from what I can check. Hold up, I gotta pull out my notes. Cafe, thank you.
Dostoevsky.
Cafe,
He says
that's
pulling
gonna
up the
be
notes that I
following map.
typed up for him. Never mind, Puffer. Well, yeah, I mean, one of the big things that I take away from that is that's the first map that Ghost Army has lost in ESA so far. 5 games in a row, they've taken a 2-0 rate, and this is the first one where they've actually lost more than they've won. So a bit of a dent in the old pride for Ghost Army. They're not going to have an invincible season, as they maybe were hoping. But MVG, you've got to give them credit. They played exceptionally well, and as I said, Puffo, they just tapped on heads a little bit harder than their other team. Next map
Absolutely.
we will be going to will be Cafe Dostoevsky, and that'll be in just a few short minutes. So grab yourself a little bit of water, grab yourself a drink, have a little sit down. We'll be back with you in a minute. Yeah, a bit of a slow round so far, though. One of the things that really...
Okay, we're back. Delta, I thought you said you were gonna bring us in.
I said you bring us in!
I thought you said, should I bring us in? Well, this is the peak comedy you guys get at ESA. You know, we got a bit of misinformation, and in the end, of course, Delta being at fault. It wasn't my fault. You know, let's blame it on Nanos. Can we blame it on Nanos?
Yeah, I'll blame it on Nanos.
Okay, we'll blame it on Nanos. Ladies and gentlemen, we return for map number 2. If you witnessed map number 1, then you don't need to know the score. But anyone who wasn't here around that time, it ended up being 7-1 or 7-4 in the favor of MVG against Ghost Army.
I'm still recovering. Yeah, 7-4 for 7-4 for MVG as they take map 1. Ghost Army losing their first map in regulation in the whole competition over the course of 6 games played. So very, very impressive MVG that they were able to overturn that. Some suspect defending, but some fantastic attacking from both sides. But at the end of the day, MVG just winning out, overcoming the momentum from an offensive comeback and winning out the map. But we look ahead, not backwards, and that's what Ghost Army will be doing. The attitude for them will be that it is still 0-0, and they'll be taking us to Cafe Dostoevsky Puffo, where they'll be hoping to level the series out.
Okay, Cafe Dostoevsky. Some people hate it, some people love it. It's a bit of a mixed map between them all, but in the end, it's a big map, a lot of window play on the top floor, not so much window play on the bottom. It does include much verticality, and I'm going to be loving to see how both of these teams are going to be taking it, but I imagine it's going to be quite similar as we slowly start heading into Cafe Dostoevsky, like by many described as a box, and by others described as a beautiful monument of Russia. In the end, we're going to be seeing who is going to be able to either bring it to the decider or MVG if they can take it home to the nil.
Back to the box for these two teams. Back to the box. Cafe Dostoevsky, it's been a popular map for both of these teams, both of them having a little bit of success on it, but in particular Ghost Army, who've won 3 times so far on this map. So they'll be looking to take this, and being on attack first, they're going to go out and they're going to chase the game, Puffo. But first, we've got to get through the bans, and MVG, with their first ban, will be taking Grim off the board.
Grim is going to be leaving. Grim was definitely quite a huge asset on Clubhouse and would be on Cafe Dostoevsky. A strong operator on this map specifically, it does shine him and nicely complement his playstyle on Gadget, but we also saw some usage when it came down to the bottom floor on Clubhouse, specifically when it came down to the execute, as it was quite a burden to some of these players. But talking about it, the second ban here from Ghost Army will be Dokkaebi, an operator that, again, this map can very heavily rely on roam, which that potential gets brought down quite heavily when the Dokkaebi tends to be on the attacking side.
Yeah, Dokkaebi. I mean, the thing is, she didn't really get played last map by
No.
either of these teams. MolotovGang, they do quite like when when they're attacking, they do quite like their intelligence, but they tend to get that more from drones than any kind of audio calls or anything like that. So I'm wondering if that might be a bit of a nothing burger of a ban. But notably, no attacking shields banned out either this time. Mira being taken off the board is, I think, reasonably standard in just about any situation. Obviously, we saw Mira getting used by both teams to great effect on their defensive rounds over on Clubhouse, but that won't be the case any longer. And Castle being taken off in Cafe Dostoevsky strikes me as potentially a little bit odd, but you have seen Castle nowadays being used to block off the central passage and make it a much more difficult rotate if these attackers need to move from the basement, from the white entrance, around from the freezer breach, around into more optimal attacking angles. So potentially an interesting target ban for that site in isolation. Going to the top floor first, though, Puffo, as these operators start getting the site set up. I'm personally quite happy to see Valk make a return to the field. We didn't see them too often back on Clubhouse, did we?
The difference in comparison when it comes down to Clubhouse and Cafe is going to be major, and we love some Valkyrie. Valkyrie would have definitely been my pick on who were to be banned on this map as a defender, but now seeing her on deck is going to be extremely fantastic, and like we saw Hattie earlier on the Ash, on the dock, same traditionally, or even saying, like, if it was religious for MolotovGang, they're going to be putting him right onto that ally with the Scorpion, which is just a brutal gun to go up against. As for Ghost Army, I mean, Delta, oh, this is going to be interesting.
It really, really is. The operators, they are all done with their setup now, although MolotovGang still got a little bit to do just to finish off. Ghost Army, they're going to start making their way up to the top floor. A fairly standard opening for every attack on bar. But here we see Kana going to go for the windows. Not really putting any pressure on a typical pixel angle, but getting some shots in and actually downing Aina really early, but unaware of it. They'll get finished off eventually by Kaina, and that's a big opening pick. But Aina, they'll have had their cameras down. They're able to sit back and give intel to their friends now.
The best of beginnings here for Molotov, especially going to be losing out on the Black Eye Dealer, but possibly the Valkyrie could be accessing some information that might be even vital for the remaining team or the remnants from MolotovGang, whatever they may hold. These flashes going to be unaffecting, but still pushing down Materia as now he needs to transfer his attention not only to the side of Piano, but White Stairs alike, as Ghost Army are still going to be keeping them at bay, mostly on the top floor, as the extension did not go well. Aina being the primary target didn't even take a long amount of time for Ghost Army to clear out, but rather simply get in and get out.
Yeah, the round slowed down since that Aina frag with Ghost Army not really pushing the advantage too quickly, and MolotovGang happy to just retreat a little bit. You see these, you see Yasuke getting absolutely bullied by all of the utility, but not any bullets flying their way. Maybe a bit of a missed opportunity to take an attacker off the board. Still, 4v5 in favour of these attackers as we tick down to the final minute, and they're starting to open up this cocktail balcony area. And Materia, they'll fall. Atox, they'll pick up a kill onto Veriox, and now it all starts to collapse in with a minute left on the clock, Bob.
The true Armageddon is going to be unveiling, and Ghost Army simply phasing through single one of these players. MolotovGang are going to be left down to the final. Hatchie, can he be the one-man army that Ghost Army should be afraid of? No, as Senzo drops down on him, COD style, and with that pistol in hand, absolutely styling on the final, and a lot better of a beginning than they were to show on the side of Clubhouse, as now MolotovGang on the defense top floor are going to be having some trouble, not only on their strategical side, but too on how technical their side of players may be.
Yeah, Blackbeard's shins are made of steel, as I now realise, having taken approximately 70 bullets to his left and right shins there, but there we go. But yeah, MVG, they played that round very, very well, didn't they? They weren't really, they weren't really pressured up until the end, but then Ghost Army, they just picked it out of anywhere. They just weren't able to get stopped, and they started tapping heads in a similar way to I think we saw MVG do previously, where Ghost Army wouldn't necessarily have a bad round strategically, but MolotovGang they weren't able to tap heads, and ultimately, at the end of the day, Ghost Army, they picked up these impact frags, which opened up that top floor completely and allowed them to push in. But yeah, it was mainly Blackbeard and his legs made of steel.
He does not skip a leg day. Let me tell you that. We clearly saw those muscles were deflecting bullets, ricochet left, right, and center. But in the end, MolotovGang, as much as we love to see Clubhouse and how strong they are with their gun ability, how mechanically gifted they are, in the end, Ghost Army managed to prevail with strategy alone. We are going to be having a bit of a rehost currently, so we just, for now, will be taking a short break so you guys don't have to constantly hear us over. So again, if you missed to get your snack earlier, now's your chance. We apologize for the sudden delay, but we get things fixed. Everyone's back up and ready, and well, Delta 1-0 for Ghost Army. Going now to the bottom floor, MVG. Give this a first chance, and wonder how this is going to be looking for them.
Yeah. So off the back of a a loss that maybe could have been more equal, but just came off the back of a lot of Ghost Army having really good fragging out skills. We come back now down to the kitchen area. So MVG, they believe they were very fairly beaten there, and they're looking to change the dynamic by taking us to a different site.
Let's see if that's going to be working it out, but currently Ghost Army going to be nicely picking up the ram buck combination, and even the sledge tripled the verticality. Might as well get the fuse in next time and quick on breach it towards garage side, as now white is going to be nicely open for Ghost Army to look upon, but I imagine they're going to want to progress to that top floor, where some of the MVG players might be waiting for them.
Yeah, a bit of a slow approach to the building this time. 30 seconds and not even really pressuring these entrances. Atox even actually still making their way up on rappel to the top floor. So a bit of a slower one, bit of a disjointed one. Maybe, actually, with a bit of a tempo change coming off the back of what was quite a reasonably long delay for these players. You think it's long for yourselves as a viewer. For these players, that'll have been a bit of an eternity. So they're going to have to really bounce back, both of these teams, and get back into winning ways to succeed here in round 2.
Holding it down. Love to see Kleine here. Nicely just patiently waiting for MolotovGang's slip up, which definitely has happened on the upper floor. Of course, maybe that reflection coming down to the bottom, as we do see MVG holding it out on bottom themselves. Ghost Army are taking not only this top approach, but also surrounding the defenders on their progression towards denying it.
Let's go getting opened up, and not a lot of roam play really from the defenders, is there, at all? All sat very comfortably down on the ground floor, not really contesting any of this vertical gameplay. But if there's been a theme, a recurring theme from Ghost Army, it's that they take a while to execute. We saw them lose several of the rounds on attack, where they, on our previous map over on Clubhouse, they had vert control, they established it, and they held it for some time, but they weren't able to compound and expand upon these advantages. A minute down, we're still yet to see the first bit of damage done to any of these attackers or these defenders. Maybe it's time to start pushing the actual site, guys.
Yeah, we've prepared upstairs a little more than enough. I feel like the preparations are done and dusted, over and ready. MolotovGang have not lost or had much casualty. Smoke beams are still ready to go. Two in the pocket, spotting out one of the players and trying to contest this top approach as Yoshiro approaches one of the players from MolotovGang, winning out the battle. A nice babe to detonate and taking out the white stair side. The Frostmat gonna be delivering a hefty down onto Yoshiro as he gets back up with a broken leg in the meanwhile, but blood to be spilled. Some of the players still upstairs and more blood needed for the blood gods. MolotovGang are slowly gonna start falling, but still returning some of this fire, as two of the players from Ghost will soon be what their name is. Varax having one go down. That will be the first, but extra are going to be needed. And attempted. Varax wins 2-3 out of nowhere. Will be MolotovGang, as Yoshiro somehow will be detonated, burnt in the fire, and walking into the Goyo, as that will be the first for the defense. And that certainly was a non-long lasting attack.
I mean, yeah, where do you say from there? That, I think a lot of it is the time that they're taking. in order to try and set up the site in the way that they want to. That's a huge amount of it. But then it's just when Ghost Army attacked there wasn't any, 2v1s being forced. It was all 1v1s or 1v and they weren't able to really take any of the players off the board. Losing a 1v1, now okay, that's a 5v4. That's manageable. As soon as you start dropping down to your 5v3s and 5v2s, that's when it becomes a cascade, and the momentum internal to a round switches completely. I think Ghost Army really needs to start seizing the initiative a little bit earlier, because MolotovGang, they allowed all of the territory on the second floor, on the top floor, all of it completely swung to Ghost Army's favour, and with 3 minutes, effectively 2 minutes of full prep time on those vertical angles, they accomplished nothing. That's an embarrassing round for them.
And it is. Ghost Army had it all, but somehow you still managed to have MolotovGang come out above you just simply by gunning you down. Again, the attempt from Variox wasn't merely just an attempt, it was an execution. Call him a judge, jury, or it, whatever he may be. He ended up getting a triple, which carried the pressure over to the final two from Ghost Army, which simply could not prevail with a given time. And of course, still the utility remaining, even after the preparations made from upstairs and on even ground on the side of Bakery. But MolotovGang get there first. It will be a great start. Better late than never. But now this is their chance to overtake the score put up by Ghost.
Yep, 1-1 it stands, and I think we're going to see them be a little bit more cautious as the defenders look to roam a little bit extended here. Not on a primary or secondary site, straight to a tertiary site, despite top floor still being open for MolotovGang. So attempting to maybe colour the attacker's intentions a little bit. But Daria going to pick up Senezo very, very early on. Senezo being kept very quiet, not only across this map, but also across Clubhouse. Taken off the board early. Variox takes a little bit of damage. They'll escape with their life, live to fight another day, and live to take Yasuke straight off the board. 5v3 as we hit the halfway mark.
Real heartbreaker is that he gets to live after it as well. These players are getting away with all this crime unpunished. They should be going to jail for plays like these. But we saw one from Daria all the way to bottom, and taking it to the top of Variox has continued prevailing time after time, as Justice is going to be hopping on that train to find himself Adox for the kill, and now all in the belt and buckle. Yoshiro finally drops as it's left down to the final bottom $2. Nomad and the Ram, the supposed players, were supposed to be taking initiative from the top, taking this vertical gunfight, falling one after another like flies, as Just has another play with them. The final drop here, not to be punished, and Hatsi manages to find the final. How the hell did this Frost manage to live after so long, so much time given to the Ram, and so much space, but still, under all of that, all of those circumstances, loses out on the gunfight, and Ghost Army, just like that, not a single casualty brought onto MVG.
Yeah, I mean, where do you go from there if you're Ghost Army? MVG have just played a perfect round against you, and you're the attackers. You've got the opportunity to say, we're going to take this engagement, we're not going to take that engagement. All of the initiative is in your hands. You just need to seize it at a time and place of your choosing, and being completely unable to do that. Maybe you see flawless rounds when you're attacking because you have that planning ability, but to concede it in that fashion so dominantly, that's going to be concerning for Ghost Army, who started well, but this second map is rapidly turning against them.
Ghost Army were looking a bit more promising going into this match. Round number 3 and 4 moving that they're going to be having some early issues against MolotovGang, simply not only because of allowing MolotovGang to take these 1v1 initiations one after another, but at the same time not trying to fight back with strategy, but rather unrelenting brute force, which of course we've seen how MVG respond to it. They have the best type of response in their self-interest to win out the gunfight and come out with a 3v5, which has been happening for 2 in a row. Can they make it the third, or will this third time's the charm finally pivot to the side of Ghost Army?
Who knows? Ghost Army being very, very slow in their attack setup, as well as in their executes coming very late on in the round. So they're stretching these rounds out to the maximum distance. MolotovGang, they're content to just wait. All clustered in on that top floor. No real flanking needed. They're just happy to invite the enemy to attack them. Quite notably, Aina on the Clash. Aina we've seen play some incredible things across both Season 10 and Season 9 for MVG on the Clash, being able to completely change the dynamic of a site. Hassie, they'll take Senezo off again. One of the first frags taken off the board. They're gonna have to do some bouncing back on the mental side to say, listen, we need to work on this. We need to stop conceding our lives so early. But that's going to be a damaging one. That takes Ying off the board.
Send prayers for Ghost Army, as even after leaving the physical world, they can't roam the place freely, as leaving the Ying behind will possibly be one of the worst picks and a very unfortunate moment here for Ghost Army, and their best resort here is to simply vault in, try to again go in brutally, which has been working against them time after time again, and they simply don't learn that mistake. They're gonna keep on pushing, no, persisting rather even, and Ghost Army get punished for the second. MolotovGang still sitting back nice, comfy, and cozy, being blanketed over the top, and now, with a 3v5, a clash in the deck, how will you possibly try to go for the plant? Yes, maybe have some smokes, but with enough bullets, I imagine MolotovGang will be taking you out one after another unless the sneak manages to actually pay off. The Brava deciding to go the other route. One on Skylight, possibly approaching window. But so many gunfights. The Izami not a spot, but Variax coming in clutch just to support Mataria in his final moments. And the final two, one stuck outside sight. The last one to be dropped and just gonna be now remaining, nicely holding down the position, and a 1v5 against Kleine, possibly. Or rather, not possibly, this is just impossible to win for Ghost Army.
I mean, yeah, at this stage, they're still sat outside. They don't have diffuser. Kinda, we've seen them play very well before from this kind of scenario, but they haven't clutched it out from this kind of scenario. And it's not surprising to me that they're going to go up to the top floor, deny MVG the satisfaction of a full flawless round, although I think between you and I, Puffo, we can probably call it as such. They're just going to go up top, they're going to get a little bit of extra talking time, and then just say to their colleagues, say to their comrades, what's going wrong? Because they started so well, and now it's going so poorly. Round 5, and MolotovGang have taken 3 on the bounce to make it 3-1.
I wouldn't ask myself in their position what's going wrong. I'd ask myself what's going right. Ghost Army have been completely fumbling it. I mean, look at the playstyle. They go in one after another just to be lambs for the slaughter, allowing MolotovGang to take not only positions where they have the advantage of peeking, holding, and being in a position that isn't as predictable, but also holding that position for long enough for Ghost Army to be forced into it. Ghost Army always seem like they're pushing into a certain execution where they don't really have any other choice. They go in, they lost the first player, which is their Ying, and their best way of going about it is simply, with their guns intact, rappelling into piano, and then just trying to take 1v1 positions, which, for the love of God, have you not learned that MolotovGang is the worst team to do that against?
I don't know, Puffo. I think it's great gameplay for them to be queuing up. It's very British, very stiff upper lip of Ghost Army to be lining up nicely and politely for MVG to put down essentially two flawless rounds in a row for the defending side. Now, for the reigning champions, no less, as we go into round 5, they're down on this basement floor, and they're going to play a little bit of a wider roam, although Aina, they're going to retreat back to the bottom floor, and they're going to make me eat my words as all of them now commit to this bottom floor. A big theme in this game of both teams having very, very shallow roams, and I'm wondering if this is something which they've just specifically planned for against each other, because MolotovGang frequently have some of the best roaming players going. They're really good in these 1v1 situations, Puffo, and they're good at escaping with their lives.
After Kag's loss, they've been feeling a bit homesick, so they want to stay in sight, not really want to explore their options against Ghost Army. And while MolotovGang on a certain side earlier with Amazi, while they were roaming upstairs, managed to pick up a kill or two, I believe they're going to be looking for similar opportunities, especially looking at Variox, who will be overseeing these red stairs, and anyone trying to vault in close to them. I imagine he's also going to be attempting wall bangs onto that mining window. And as Ghost Army are taking this top floor, joining themselves in, MolotovGang, again, they feel no pressure. They can sit by and just play as if it was a ranked match and get away with it.
Yeah, slow development coming out from the attackers this time round as well, Bob. As there's just they're taking vert control. They did this last time. They spent about 2 minutes on vert control, and I'm wondering if they're going to be doing it again. This time, notably, still no MVG presence anywhere above that first floor. So no threat of roamers, nothing like that. But what they're going to do is they're just going to anchor in and say, you know what, you're not going to get any easy kills from the vertical gameplay. This is the kind of moment, Pob, where I would love, especially like Variox or someone like that, to be very selfish and run up to the top floor and put so much pressure on these defenders, on these attackers, that they don't necessarily need to bunker in on the site. But one thing that MVG have shown is that not only can they turtle, they're aggressively able to turtle. They can pick off kills like no one's business, and on top of that, they're not going to fall foul of any nonsense, like those flashbangs as Hassi takes Yoshi off the board and stymies this push into Bakery.
Do not let Hassi be your lawyer. This man is the prime suspect of a murder he just got away with. Mid-flash finds one. That's a headshot, and he's still keeping the defenders at bay. Not only with his gun, but utility likewise. As finally he falls to the hands of Yasuke, but the time is being reeled down, and the smoke waves are starting to come out nicely flowing. One still behind Bakery. Senzo to take him out. Just will, but two more remain here. The smoke and Doc to duo up, and right around the corner, we get to see the first possible victim. Not much carry on the utility, and Variox knife fighting against them all, as not checking his 6 nor his left is where he gets taken out for the final. And now MolotovGang will be losing their defense. Ghost Army getting away with one of their own.
It's far too little too late. They set up for this big push, and it gets put down by one bullet from one player. Then the toxic grenades come out, then the Goyo canisters get popped, and there's just nothing to it. This Ghost Army attack is relatively toothless in my mind. They do somehow pick it out at the very death, but how? How? That's the question. MolotovGang deserve to win that. I'm not sure exactly how they failed to, but it won't matter. 3v2. MolotovGang on course for the kind of optimal defensive half configuration of 4v2, and they've done it in emphatic style. This time they're gonna take again maybe a tertiary site, a site that's not overly popular with a lot of players, but this can be very, very powerful. We've seen them win up on top floor previously in round 4, and we've seen them win on this site in round 3. It relies on a very heavy top floor presence, particularly up to the west side of the building, more so than a whole scale presence as you maybe see when you're holding top itself. But they were very, very powerful at it. And given that MolotovGang have noticed that Ghost Army are very, very slow to attack the site, maybe this is the play.
Oh, MolotovGang, this spawn peak is really starting to lean into them, but they do thankfully call off of it. It would have been too large of a risk to lose Ine so early on. Now, Yoshiro being put on the Ying is going to be a questionable decision. Again, he is one of the most reliable players when it comes down to taking these gunfights, but at the same time, he likes taking them. That will be putting the risk of someone losing his life, specifically the Ying being one of those early picks. Of course, as long as the cards are played correctly, that could be a different outcome. Ghost Army will need to take this top floor. We already see the reason they're going to be bringing the Ying and IQ to take that utility from top, push the defenders back down, and force them to be victims of the Candelas.
God, they're so slow though. Why? Why is Senezo only now, with a minute arriving, a minute down on the clock, only just now arriving at the wall of the building? It's so slow. I don't understand how they've gotten away with it. This can't be how they've played in the competition to date. They must have been attacking it faster, but up to date, this is where they're at. Variox getting taken off the board earlier, that's going to be a big impact frag, because now they can no longer decide which of their utilities get taken off the board and which get activated, but Yoshiro picking up that kill will be paid back as Hassi removes them from the board. Top floor control still very much up in the air with half of the time elapsed, but these MolotovGang defenders getting pinched in as Isuke will pick up a second, making it 4v3, ticking down to a minute. Top floor control mostly established. Now it's time to put some pressure on. But here we go, Ghost Army and Vert gameplay. They do love it, but they love it a bit too much so far. Will they be able to temper their passion for it, or will MVG fall off foul as Atox and Senezo pick off 2, and Yasuke picks up a 3rd to level us up? 3-3 in the first half. And to be honest with you, Bob, that's come out of nowhere.
That's come out of nowhere, and Ghost Army are now going to be securing themselves a nice measly draw 3-3 with Molotov and looking to equal it out, as now we expect Molotov to either perform similarly or Ghost Army to finally check in and start locking in on their defenses. This is going to be a time and dire they need to do so, otherwise, again, MolotovGang already have a map under the belt. They get this one and this is going to be over within even a chance of sniffing out Consulate. So, Ghost Army going top floor. This is where a lot of these teams find themselves comfortable, but the attackers can variously take advantage of these windows, alike with many angles from below, and of course, matches alike. I'm imagining MolotovGang are going to want to very nicely spread out. But for Ghost Army, I was hoping to see some Frostmat kills here, I'll be honest.
Yeah, a little bit of a difference between Ghost Army and MVG. MVG quite liked bringing smoke out, whereas it's the other SAS defensive operator making an appearance for Ghost Army, with the Mute making an appearance in the hands of Yusuke, and that powerful shotgun, quite notably. First for setting up the site, but then also for blapping people at close range. That'll be used to just to shore up the defenses of this bathroom wall, as well as a variety of others, and cut down on MolotovGang's maybe infamously strong intel drone-based gameplay. That's a tongue twister.
Surely is. MolotovGang quickly opening up hatches. They're on the roof and nicely ready to stumble upon you, Ghost Army, who have nicely extended down to this middle ground, and in the meanwhile, maybe even trying to interrupt any type of ground coverage from MolotovGang all the way to the bottom. Yasuke Tech and heavy artillery, and that him being on the receiving end definitely won't be proving for the best, but a very new and interesting tech, you could call it here, as Senzo is going to be through the verticality healing the almost taken out Mute player to get him back on full.
Yeah, MVG paying Ghost Army the same respect that they were paid by having a very slow opening minute, but quite notably, all of them make it to the building in a good fashion. Not so much the electric gameplay that maybe we could have expected from them, you know, especially with shields still very much all in play. And in fact, Hassi will take the first L of MVG's offensive half as they get peeked out on an upside repel by Atox. Big impact frag is that.
MolotovGang have been taking defeat after defeat, not being able to bring on some victory of their own, and this drop is definitely quite risky for a lot of players on Chalet due to the C4 below, commonly known to be exploded the second the impact can be done. We do hear a boom go off, and anticipation from Materia that one could be sneaking in from behind, which hopefully will be paying off for them later, as currently they're running out of time. Adox has returned to site looking for a run out himself. Will he take up the offer? I don't think so. Again, Ghost Army realized the position they're currently holding, and it's a stronger one than MolotovGang certainly asserts, as walking simply into the holes that are open to your left, Yoshiro takes advantage. One for him and another for Kleine as he drops.
Lovely.
He takes up what Valkyrie didn't, as all of a sudden it's falling down. MolotovGang with a final to stand and surrounded by 4 hungry sharks who are smelling some blood. Materia is going to be caught in a crossfire in any moment. 40 seconds to remain. Not only do you have no escape way out of it, but you're being confronted by 3 players. You get the down on 1, but greediness catches over you, and Adox manages to pull out the deagle, finishing the job.
I've never seen an MVG side on attack so disjointed and so short on ideas. And that's maybe more paying compliment to their previous gameplay than it is to saying that they're bad here, because that attack, it was super disjointed. And let's take nothing away from Ghost Army. Kleine's playing out of their skin. They're playing a fantastic game. All of this Ghost Army team, I think, rides around for round 7 there. But MVG, in attack, you don't really bet against them in most cases. But this season, it just seems like on occasion, back in the Swiss stage and here in the knockout stage, just there, you saw a lack of creativity and a lack of really coordination, which wasn't present back in Season 9, where they absolutely ran away with it all. That was a tough watch if you're an MVG fan, I'd wager.
It was. It definitely was, and not granted to them. I feel like that was something they had within their grasp, but This ended up not going the MVG way, as Ghost Army definitely punished and played off of it. Well done by them, credit to be given where it's due, and with due diligence, Ghost Army managed to retake the lead with a 4-3 now, hoping to consistently keep up this type of performance. Now maybe bringing it to 2 rounds above. Maybe match point before MolotovGang can even rack up and attempt to fight back against it. The resistance has been quite futile, and going to the bottom floor, this is where MolotovGang can prove themselves and maybe equalize the round count.
As we've seen previously, slow build up, slow build up. Neither of these teams really seeming to want to rush. MVG may be known for throwing in a rush round or two every so often, but they're not at the point where they need to adapt in that way. Kleine taking some early defensive gunfights there on that first floor. Pulling back very soon, not really taking any, giving out any damage or taking any time from these attackers, but making their presence known. They'll retreat back to VIP corridor as just starts to have a look at opening up not only the vert, but also peeking through that open wall into the kitchen.
One player being caught on his phone, having a session of Angry Birds while action unfolds above him. That might be some information quite valuable. As MolotovGang will again slowly approaching the likes of Ghost Army. Right now, again, not being pressured at all. No drop of blood from each of these teams. Not a single corpse to be counted, as that might just change in any given moment, and so it does as MolotovGang finally start picking up the pace. 2 to be riddled, another to be dribbled, and right now Yoshiro coming around the corner, and he's waiting for the MolotovGang. Might be stepping into the lines then the second they want to approach beside a bakery. Breaches to be out, and unless this Valkyrie gets spotted, it's going to be a danger zone and a fear factor to say the least. And well, there it is, the information reliable, and now the Valkyrie having to fight against it. The C4 not going to be claiming anyone. Amy still trying to find this pre-fire and will be supported by the IQ side as Just finds Adox, the final one in a 1v2 situation, who can pre-fire as much as you want, but just from behind will take you out before and after it. Multi-Hatchy to confirm that flawless, lock it in, and MVG will be bringing it up to 4-4.
A third, or depending on how you look at it, fourth, my bad, their second, or depending on how you look at it, their third flawless round so far. 3 of their rounds effectively flawless so far. However, when they do fail to pick up these kills in quick succession, they're a relatively soft target, RMVG. Interesting that they're able to do it both on defense and on attack. They'll take a lot of hearts from that, but again, I think there was a lack of commitment to the roam game coming out from Ghost Army. They're being kept very, very quiet. Kleine, who we saw play very well last map, being kept to 2 and 3. They're not having the most to create amazing games in the world. They're not being able to plan their will on the game as they were able to. Instead, other players are coming to the fore as the kind of hero players for Ghost Army so far in this game. Yasuke, Atox having some very, very good games, and we saw Yoshiro earlier with a couple of good impact frags. But not enough. MolotovGang, they've now got a little bit more momentum than they used to, and they're in a prime position on attack to go ahead and start seizing the game and take us to bed a little bit early. Round 9 in a 4v4 scenario, 5 players on the field for both sides. It's about to kick off, Buffo. This is where the magic happens, I think.
Where the magic happens, and you know all parties only get good the later at night it is in MolotovGang. As much as I imagine they don't want it, Ghost Army are still feeling a bit of that craving for cake. Maybe trying to take some pieces away from MolotovGang, as they've been certainly getting away with that objective on Cafe Dostoyevsky. Now the drone upstairs is going to be doing some fantastic job. The Valkyrie, I imagine, will be a bit of a bother, but that's why you bring the IQ. It's a good counter play between the two, but I'm going to be only worried about how this Warden will come in contact, especially in usability. I imagine it's the comfort pick, but at the same time the shield coming in quite useful, as Ghost Army now are going to be also delivering some of their own aggression onto MolotovGang. And well, when you're up against Medaria, what truly can you do?
Yeah, early kill over onto Kleine. Again, being kept quiet. Unfortunately, they'll be sat now on their cams trying to give the info to these Ghost Army defenders. Yoshiro having a very narrow hold through from Smallbake, and this is really interesting because they're going to struggle to impact any of this aggression coming out from MolotovGang. They're not in a prime position to really affect breakery entrance at all. But it's not going to matter because MolotovGang instead, they're going to go up and do some vert. He is hoping that they don't fall afoul of what Ghost Army did and do vert for 3 minutes solid. Opening up into prep, they'll force the players away and force these defensive rotations to start taking place.
Really need to switch things up here, MolotovGang. You've been sticking on this top floor, already having all the viewers be just a bit cautious of it. And now, the allergies start kicking in. Ghost Army already having a bit of sneezes, trying to make this rotation and adaptation decide as Yasuke, with a bit of a run out, gets punished after it, as Hatsi might have read into that movement. 12 steps ahead is what you could call it, and right now another push bar side might be changing the rhythm these two teams really have to offer, and so it does! A step too much forward, and Senzo loses his grip, but also slipping over and being another for the count of MVG as it leaves it down to 2 players. A huge blunder, an information lack will not be, as Just finds another of a fantastic reshot, but all of a sudden Adox is going to be completely pressurized into a can, and let's spill the beans here for Ryox. MolotovGang are back in the lead.
When they took the 2 players out in quick succession, I started to believe, but a split second later, MVG, they do very well to not only force the 1v1s and the 2v1s, but also backing each other up for the refrags. Very, very well played from there. Not content to sit back and wait for the game to die out. They're going to go ahead and they're going to seize it. That was very good attacking round from MVG. From the reigning champions, no less, keeping Ghost Army on their toes. 5v4. 2 more rounds separate MolotovGang from potentially booking their place in the grand final. Ghost Army, they're under pressure now, like they've not been under pressure at all in ESA so far. They've had a map taken off them, and now they're very, very close to losing their first game outright. MVG, we've seen them do it back in Season 9. When it is now, as it is back then, Knockout Siege, they're very, very able to turn it on.
MolotovGang, I'm hoping Materia is going to be sticking to that Nook, as it's one of the few operators that is a bit rarely seen, but also underestimated at times. Lock it in and load it. MolotovGang going to be facing one of the more difficult sites, the most difficult site they've had to go up against up until recent times. While Ghost Army have not completely been taken out from each and every single angle they've been confronted from, but at the same time, MolotovGang have found themselves very strictly puzzled by Ghost Army here. Every angle they take, player is lost, and they can't really find that team coercion they most of the time show.
30 seconds down. As we've come to expect, not that much in the way of early pushes, and also not much in the way of early spawn peaks coming out from these defenders on Ghost Army's side, but they are playing a bit of an extended roam here with Kleiner. Kind of ditching tradition and pushing out a little bit, waiting for someone to walk through that white door. That's going to be Madaraya, who is going to go as yet unscathed.
Thatcher's still intact. Is it going to be surprising for MolotovGang? I imagine that will be changing, as again, right now they're only just merely scouting out the site, seeing what options they have and what paths can be taken, and now looking for one of the million possibilities, trying to find the best resort. Will, of course, at some point need to push down. I'm hoping that this skylight will not be one of those possibilities they end up taking, and rather a more careful approach.
There's something to be said for the careful approach. MVG have made it work for them so far, but here they are taking a bit of a risk with just their breach enabler, trying to put pressure over onto Pixel, the player in bathroom, responding in kind, but very happy to just sit there and absorb the pressure rather than take the fight to them. Atox will get taken out though, as Hassi makes their mark on the game from the overhang there. That's going to be a big important kill. They'll be sat on the cameras now in a 5v4 scenario, both in player count and in score. 1 minute on the clock. It's MVG's round to take.
This could be it. It might be, but will they be able to really deliver on what they're going to be promised? Ghost Army can still have that deniability as their secret trump card and not checking the bell. Go Senzo. He manages to put it on even odds. All of a sudden, that Vector is going to be the great deliverer for Ghost Army's repetition, whatever the word might be. MolotovGang in 4-4, the window's being opened up, but will they be utilized to its max? Yes, I believe so. The Grim Bees, you get exposed for a second. Senzo takes his shot. He's looking for a second. That's another for Yasuke. Materia does deliver, but Yoshiro, oh, he's just the same on the like of it. Eine, last one, he gets a headshot, looking for the second, maybe punish that cheekiness. The final two are going to be White Stairs, and oh, if you just realized that little piece of information, he gets one, he's confused by the other, and Ghost Army will be bringing it back 5-5 fashion.
Very, very impressive round from Senazo there. Criminal lack of droning, lack of intel gain on Cocktail Balcony. When you drop down New Belcatch, you absolutely can't discount the possibility that someone will be there. They had the second to line the shot up perfectly, Senazo, and then to push out and flick here. As you say, looking back at the window, checking the angles, it killed the round dead for these MVG attackers, who attacked maybe a little earlier than typical, but they attacked all the same and were felled one by one. Absolutely fantastic from Senazo, who's really had an impact and pulled that round out of it for Ghost Army. 5v5 then in round count and 5v5 in player count as we head into round 11. A much tighter round, much tighter game rather, than we saw back on Clubhouse. And it's only going to ramp up as the pressure, the dials turn, it intensifies, and both of these teams are going to be acutely aware of what the next 2 to 4 rounds could mean for them and the rest of this competition.
This round has so much impact, and I imagine carrying a lot of burden on both the team's shoulders. The chance to take it home and the wish, the craving they must have to eat up this one. Round number 11 must be so large we can't even imagine. As again, this is going to be the one to really leave it down to the wire. You win this one and the next and you're settled and set. For Ghost Army, that means a second chance at life and going furthering down and not going into the lower. While for MVG, it means early sleep, early party, or maybe even a cheerleader session in their VC. Whatever it may be, both these teams, they're looking forward to it. But at the same time, I'm imagining the focus might as well be as close as it gets to be.
2 minutes left on the clock, nothing much happening from both of these teams. MolotovGang probing and searching for the weakness, but they're going to be a little more cautious given that they were caught out by some intel failings last time around. It is a tertiary site, this. It should, in theory, be easier to attack, but Ghost Army, they're not stacking that top floor in the same way that MolotovGang approached this site. Only one player playing up there on that top floor on White Stairs. Now, on Cocktail Lounge. Now the Goyo joins them on the White Stairs. That'll be Yoshiro and the rest of them playing safe downstairs. But that's going to be the first kills for Ryox. They pick off Yasugi. Not content with how they performed last round, they bring us to a 4v5. Half of the round time gone for 4.
Half of the round gone and more players to disappear alongside it. 1 for 1, and MVG are still going to be staying at the very top. Now Ghost Army being forced to find these 1v1 initiations, otherwise they're going to be executed at the very end stage. Goes to be popped. And speaking of the Goyo, Yoshiro's making a roundabout to try and find this bar gaming and maybe just maybe catch one off guard. Now it's up to the side of MolotovGang if they can realize this mistake. Yes, they can. Ryox just in time to deny the kill from appearing onto just getting that ram back up and ready, steadied for the plant. And in the meanwhile, Ghost Army limited down to their final 2 players. It's going to be on the back thruster, and they're going to really need to shift it into second gear. Adox and Senzo. Senzo, you did it once. I imagine, like I said, that VC is right now a cheerleader group. They're cheering these 2 final on as they need to fight winning battles. But I don't think that's the case. The fire might be setting off. You still have those 30 seconds to let go of, but you're second in hand. Senzo falls, Adox to follow, and MVG claiming match point.
They're so close, tantalizingly close. Very good execute for Iox, waking up, taking up a 3k, and then the ending there through the vert hole. They never even really had to set a foot on site in order to claim the victory. And that top site hold, as soon as this first kill came out here that you see on the replay from Variox, that top floor hold melted away completely. Variox saving their colleague there, completing the top floor take, and from there the vertical holes that had been made were enough for MVG to claim victory. Ghost Army now only one round away from being dropped to the lower bracket final. It still leaves them with an opportunity to make it in the competition, but MolotovGang, they're here. They've shown their intentions. They've shown that they're ready to go all the way to the final, and this is the round where they could book their place there and now.
Ghost Army, a time of change has come, and I guess the age of it as well, with them picking up two roamers, the Solus Individual, potential third being the Valkyrie here, to try and challenge MolotovGang and bring the battle to them, as this is their final resort to being at a losing site. Again, match point here is going to be brutal. They lose it out second time within regulation and not bringing it into OT. That's going to be their final chance. They get the lifelines have run out, and you know how Cats have 9 lives? Ghost Army have currently 0. This is going to be their last chance. Again, pick up this round, lock in for the final, don't allow 1v1 situation against MVG, and certainly for the love of God, don't give them the space to work as a team.
Yeah, they've woken up of late, haven't they, MVG, picking up that 11th round. But these two teams, they've essentially been trading. If that trend continues, then we will be going to OT. And remember, because this isn't technically a knockout game, it won't be unlimited. It is purely max OT if we do reach that point here in map 2. 2 minutes-ish left on the clock, and the IQ being used to point out exactly where these Ghost Army defenders are. That's very good usage of the utility there from MVG. But now, how do they collapse in and take this roamer? That's the key.
That's the key, and we're going to need to open a bit of a lock here to this mystery and question. An answer to be soon delivered. I imagine the Solus Adox was already sticking by that half wall, looking to peek about it, and as we speak of the devil, so he shall appear. ANA drops down to the ground, and you've lost your ace. Baker of Breach is going to be a sayonara here, and Adox still trying to challenge these players up from above as a nade will forcefully push him out, but Senzo still stays above, and Variox waiting for Adox's drop right on the spot will nicely deliver the final blow onto him, but it's one for eye for eye, and in the end, Ghost Army still have that player above, but not the man count to equal MolotovGang's, or just maybe that's about to change. The shots from the SMG-12 are to be heard, and Senzo keeps on delivering these soul-taking shots while wasting a humongous amount of time here. Variox takes damage, but he does not falter. The last one to be on site will be Kleine, and will he be able to battle off the hungry MolotovGang as they approach him, because the attack's best option here is to simply rush site.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a bit criminal for Aina to be falling there when the calls have been given about people upstairs, but that's going to matter. Variox will finish the deal, taking Vigil off the board. 3v1 scenario, and now it's time for Kleine to try and shine as they take it down to a 2v1. This is their moment to try and pull it out of the firebomb.
This is it. He's still fighting against it. Kleine simply doesn't give up, but he's stuck in a corner. He downs Variox, and it's down to a 1v1 situation. The wallbang did not connect. The flash is going to be there. He connects some shots, but just doesn't push. The final one to be downed. It's down to the FPX versus the R4C, and a spray from Just takes it. MolotovGang win it out, and meet your maker, Ghost Army, as 2-0. MolotovGang on Cafe will be walking home with a beautiful booking ticket right over to that forward step of winning ESA Season Cup number 10.
Booking their place in the final, only just within regulation, Puffo, but MVG taking us all the way there after a shaky start, not only in the game but also in the competition as a whole. They've made their way all the way through the Swiss stage and all the way through the upper bracket to arrive as they have now in the grand final. MVG are one of your 2 grand finalists for season 10 of the ESA Cup. Puffo, they deserve it, don't they? What a game. Both sides giving it their all, but in the end, Kleine unable to counter a 3v1, but damn did they try.
Oh, MVG, they've done it many more times than we can count with our fingers, and they're gonna do it again. They take out Ghost Army, which were a very good match. You know, honestly, for what teams have been proving against MVG, Ghost Army were a real threat, especially in this cafe side. Maybe a bit of patches in certain rounds, and maybe we're going to be seeing the similar matchup going into the grand finals with a possible different result, but a lot of changes to be made, a lot of practice in the meanwhile, and of course, another match or another couple of matches before we even get to the grand finals, and I believe we're going to be having another match tomorrow, Delta.
Yeah, the next two play days going to decide who makes it to the lower bracket final. And then, of course, the winner of that will go on to play the loser of this game, Ghost Army, in the lower bracket final to decide who finally makes it up to the heady heights of the grand final and who will be fighting our reigning champions, MolotovGang, for the ESA crown. Tomorrow, it will be LDL Valor going up against Team Sync. Team Sync notably being the only team so far, well, one of only two teams so far in the competition to take down MVG. Is that the way that we end up in the final with MVG on the back foot? Are they the ones who will be taking the crown off them? Who knows? But you should definitely be tuning in tomorrow to find that out.
Maybe one of the few pieces of kryptonite needed to really bring down MVG. That is going to be a fantastic show match today. Although not taking it to the decider console, it will have to stay in its dark, deep corner, and maybe for another day to come around. But as it's getting a bit more late for some of us Europeans, and even in the UK, I imagine it's already getting a bit dark outside, we're going to have to leave you on this Monday evening, and of course, have to wish you a great rest of your day. So just make sure to stay tuned, and of course, be there tomorrow as we're closing in on the grand finals, Delta, which I imagine is going to be a really fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. Reigning champions there, looking to reclaim their crown. A number of challengers who have been finalists over and over again, looking to make their statements on the competition. Oh, you couldn't write a better script, could you?
You simply cannot. And well, I imagine you're all hyped about as much as we are here. So, of course, before we head off, thank you everyone to watching, everyone to chatting, supporting your teams, or just here to be a good fellow sportsman type of person, whatever you really want to consider it. Thank you to the players who came along, of course, gave it their all, Ghost Army and MVG. Fantastic performance from them both. The production in the background was fantastic. Oko and Nanos can never have a bad time with them. And of course, Delta, thank you so much for sticking by, as we're going to have to head you off, leave you there, and of course, do have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, a bit of a slow round.